Good afternoon, YouTubers. It's July 2nd. I'm supposed to be on my way to the desert, but I didn't get there. But Dan's been busy boy tinkering on his disco and doing a little post-adventure maintenance. Found an oil leak, and we're going to share it with you. So you can do the same thing for your car instead of calling me up in the middle of the night going, the wheel fell off. So anyway, like, subscribe, tell your buddies, and if you want to go on a desert trip, offroadexperience.com. Bye.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dan here on behalf of Mike Green and offroadexperience.com. Just had a chance to enjoy 4 days and 3 nights up in the Lost Coast area with my 1995 Land Rover Discovery One. The vehicle ran great and tackled everything, all of the trails that I wanted to take it on, and a lot of off-road, including Usal and down into Shelter Cove, out to Needle Rock Visitor Center, out to Windy Point, to hike down to the Punta Gorda Lighthouse. But all that off-road, it's important to remember that once you get back on pavement, to do a quick check of your vehicle to make sure that everything is good. Oftentimes, as soon as you pull off, one of the things that you're taught at Off-Road Experience is to do a quick check of your vehicle to make sure you don't have any tire issues or damage, or maybe some debris, sticks or something else that might be underneath the truck or the vehicle that you're taking, and do a quick walk around and check the overall condition. Then when you get home, you can do a little bit more detailed check to see if you've got any issues that you weren't able to pick up when you come off the trail. So let's do a quick walk around of the disco, and I'll show you a little bit about what I learned. So as we start doing the walk around, it's pretty dirty. When I came off the trail, I found some branches and other things that were underneath the car that I was able to pull off that was tied up in the suspension. But nothing significant, no issues with the tires. Did a walk around. Lighting was okay. I got one light out, simple, probably something vibrated loose while I was out on the road. But as I come around to the right-hand side front, things look good. But I noticed something here, right rear wheel. This was an issue that initially I noticed when Mike Green and I were out and on our Nevada run. I had one very small leak, some kind of seal link or fluid that was leaking in one spot on the tire, and it was coming from behind the wheel, somewhere from the hub. So I'm thinking I got a hub seal or maybe a breather, because it was a real small leak initially. So let's go underneath and we'll take another further look. It was nowhere near as prominent as this. This is significant. So the more I drove it off-road, the more this started to develop, so I got to take a look at it. But right now I'm thinking I've either got a bearing issue, I've got a hub seal issue, or maybe an axle shaft that's loose, and the seal's now compromised a bit from some pretty rough off-road riding. But I'll show you what I did first. So here we are up underneath the car, and as you can see, looking at the back of the wheel from the inside, I don't know how many leakage that's coming down on the inside. I'll know more when I got the wheel off to inspect, but I wanted to show you the initial repair that I did when it was a small, actually, service that I did, and that's this breather here. I thought it might be a clogged axle breather, so I put a wrench on this, took it off. It's very simple. What you want to do first is clean really good with a wire brush around the top to scrape off any loose debris. Hit it with a can of air to blow the debris out of there, because once you remove this breather, you don't want debris to drop down in to the axle and contaminate the gear oil that's in there. So what I did was clean it off real good with a brush, and then shot it with some brake cleaner, wiped it down real good with a coarse cloth, and then I tried to pull this plastic hose off of here, off of this fitting, but it was real tight, and I initially unclipped it from these different clips all the way up in the area around the the fill. You can kind of see it way back up in there. The hose comes out. It's just a series of clips. It's pretty straightforward. You could loosen the nut up off the top of this and back it out. It's kind of a pain because that hose will just keep looping around and hooking on all your stuff. So what I did was put a little bit of heat, just a very small amount, from a heat gun to make this just pliable enough to remove it. And then I took the this banjo bolt out. I also took out the tube, disconnected it from all the clips. Pay attention to the routing. And what I used was a length of weed trimmer line. It's stiff enough to go down here. This was clogged. The tube was clogged. And when I took off the banjo bolt, it was full of gunk. So cleaned it out with like a pipe cleaner, then hit it with some brake cleaner, put it on a wire brush to buff the threads, get it all cleaned up, get the mating surfaces nice and clean, put on new crush washers that I got available. I found some at a local hardware store. They worked just fine. Cranked this back down once everything was all blown out with air and good to go, and the tube was good to go, reconnected and remounted and torqued just to good and tight. I don't know what the setting was. It wasn't wear firm. It's not doing any weight on there. You just want to keep it tight. And that seemed to cure it initially. So I was under the impression that it was just a breather that was clogged, because the tube I took off was indeed clogged. But as you can see when I showed you earlier, it was very much more than that. So it's something to do with either bearings or hub seal or the axle shaft. But let me show you something else that I found, which is, again, a reason why we do these more closer inspections. When I looked, I found that I'm also missing a bolt here. And for the life of me, I have no idea how a metal locking nut came off of this bolt that runs through the suspension component here, the swing arm pivot bolt. The nut was gone, and this arm had backed out a bit, the bolt had backed out a bit. So I have since taken this out and determined it's an M16 by 2.0 thread. I've cleaned the bolt up. I have ran another M16 nut over these threads to clean them up. They were a little hammered a little bit from the arm, from the swing arm bouncing around, or I'm sorry, the sway bar bouncing around on here, and the threads were a little buggered. So what I'm going to do now before I do anything else is reinstall and torque down a new lock nut, M16 lock nut, onto this pivot bolt. So I'm going to put it on hold while I get that job done first, and then we'll get the car in the air. Right, something else I want to point out when you're doing this work, I initially removed the bolt, as I mentioned, put it on a wire brush, cleaned it up. I used another M12 nut because I didn't have a proper die. I'm sorry, M16 nut. Put that on there, ran it up a few times, and it was easy work just to kind of clean up those threads. And then I went to put it back together, and I thought, this is odd because you've got this rubber bushing that's rubbing up against the inside of this bar. So I got online, checked the schematic for the suspension component, and it should be the pivot bolt, large M16 washer, almost like a fender washer, an outside or an inside bushing, an outside bushing, and then in between there should be a washer, another M16 washer. It's a different part number than this one, and in comparison, this one is more of a fender washer. This was your standard, and the washer would bear up against the inside of this sway bar mount. So had I just thrown this together, I must have lost this along the way. So trip number 2, back to the hardware store, got an M16 washer to mount on the inside Now I've got this metal surface bearing against this metal surface instead of directly on the bushing in there. So I don't have 3 hands. I'm going to line this up, get it properly mounted with now this new hardened M16 washer on the inside. Again, you can see it's smaller diameter than this one on the outside, which is consistent with the schematic from Rovers North. And I'll remount and get ready to install. So now we have the proper configuration. Pivot bolt, fender washer, inner bush, outer bush, another hardened washer up against the metal plate and the inside of the bush, just like you would on your shock. And then now I have the metal lock washer. It's not been, I'm sorry, metal lock nut. It's not been torqued down yet. So I'm going to put some torque on this thing with a air gun, crank the heck out of it and get it torqued down there. And I'll double check with a manual that I have to confirm what the torque value is later, and then torque it to spec. So once I realize, okay, at some point this lock nut was loose enough that it came off and I didn't have a washer, I went over. Now I'll check the the driver's side, and it does not appear on the passenger side mount that I have a lock washer in there. And you can see the metal bearing against the metal swing arm mount impacting directly on this bushing in here. So I'll back this one off and clean it up, put some anti-seize on there, and put another M16 washer on this, so both sides are consistent and then properly torqued, and then I'll tackle the wheel issue. So I'll be back in a bit. All right, so I removed the driver's side pivot bolt lock nut. Someone had been in here before because there was remnants of anti-seize in there. Wouldn't have been something from the factory. So, and these bushings looked like they were replaced. But what was missing was the M16 washer that went between the sway bar on the interior part of the sway bar and the outside bushing. So took the bolt out on the passenger driver's side, cleaned it up. The threads look good. Put a proper hardened M16 washer on there on the exterior side. Already had a good one on the interior. This is a 24 millimeter. You could also use, in a pinch, I didn't have two 24 millimeters, so I used a 15/16 to hold the lock nut. 15/16 wrench here, 24 would have been the proper one. Put a lot of pressure on it with the air gun. I'll go back and double check the torque once I consult the manual. But I've got both the driver's side and now a duplicate on the passenger side. Fender washer, 2 bushings, the pivot bolt going through, cleaned up, another hardened washer, and then a new bolt. Guess what's going in my tool kit or my breakdown kit? I'm going to put another set of hardened washers in there and a new lock nut going in there. Might even buy a new pivot bolt from Rovers North or Atlantic British. I think they actually sell a kit that has all this hardware for like $20 or something like that. Cheap insurance to throw it in. What you don't get is the bushings, but if you carry a spare shock, which I do now after breaking a shock, I can hijack the bushings from that and use them in here. So repair to the sway bar mounting bolts, these pivot bolts, are done. But again, if I hadn't looked and tried to track down the source of that leaky hub seal, I would have missed this missing bolt, which would have been problematic. At some point that's going to drift out and I might lose the whole thing. Will the truck be still drivable, and could I get by with some throwing another bolt in there in the interim? Yes. But if I'm out on the trail and I'm getting a lot of articulation, who knows what this loose end would be doing if it's going up and down. So like Mike Green says in their off-road experience class, do that cursory check when you get off the trail. Then when you get home, do a deep dive into some of this stuff, especially if I hadn't looked at the leaky seal issue, I would have missed this. So easy repair, fix it now. It's a hell of a lot easier to do in my driveway than out in the middle of nowhere. So next up, I'll start to tackle the wheel. What I'm gonna do next is, I gotta get the truck in the air, and I'm gonna start with checking the bearings, which means raising this rear wheel. You can't really tell up in my driveway, it's pitched that way, pitched towards the driver's side. And I do that because once I get this wheel in the air, I want any fluid inside or any gear oil in the axle to go towards the differential. One, so it doesn't make as much of a mess, and two, to kind of salvage whatever fluid I've got in there. So I'm gonna raise this side, but before I raise it, I gotta make sure that I have the transfer case engaged, which I've done, and then I'm going to chalk the tires so the truck won't roll away on me. So for safety reasons, chalk a tire so you can't roll, and then engage that transfer case to lock your transfer case and keep your truck from rolling away. All right, more to follow. Next stop, we'll be getting this wheel off the ground and checking next for loose bearings. All right, so just to confirm, parking brake set, transmission in park, transfer case, center diff lock, engaged, wheels chalked, and now I've raised the rear wheel just slightly. I kind of screwed myself because I ended up right on a crack in my driveway, so might have to address that. But this will give me a chance to check to see if there's any kind of movement in the wheel, to make sure that when I rock the wheel kind of back and forth at 9 and 3 or 6 and 12, to see if I've got any kind of wheel bearing movement. So I'll check that now.
Okay, go.
Okay, so I got the rear wheel raised. Now I want to see if I've got any kind of rocking movement to indicate if a bearing is either loose or starting to disintegrate. So that's the first check to see if this is a bearing issue. So, well, I got it here, and I got nothing. This thing, there's no movement. Now, I'm rocking it back and forth like this. So, my first thought is this is not a bearing issue. So I'm going to take the wheel off and then start looking where it's leaking. This fluid is leaking from, but not bearing. All right, so we got the wheel off. I repositioned my jack so the back wheels weren't in that crack. Now I'm checking to see where that seal is leaking from, and I think I have found it. Yeah, I think oh, look at that. Okay, well, 1, 2, that one's tight. 3, 4. Okay, well, we found the problem. This axle's loose, even though I got lock nuts on there. So there's my problem. That's where my leak's occurring. These are finger tight. I'm lucky I had one still tightened up. So that is the source of my my leaky gear oil coming out of this axle. So what I'm going to do is clean all this up, back it off, and reseal with some high temp silicone sealant after I clean it up, and then I'll re-torque. But I have even these lock washers on here did not, just from not being properly torqued, this sucker came undone. So it was telling me all along, and it wasn't until it got even looser, that this thing wasn't properly torqued down. So I'm gonna pause this now, pull this off, and we'll tackle this a little bit later. All right, we'll see you in a bit.
3, go.
All right, so we're back. We've got the half shaft axle flange all cleaned up. We also cleaned up this surface that will be the mating surface for the inside of the flange. All of the bolts have been cleaned up, and then I put lock washers on them, as well as anti-seize. And then what we're gonna do, per the book, the Haynes manual, it shows that the half shaft flange retaining bolts are 48 foot-pounds. So that's what we will be using to make sure that we get these on. So we'll start to line them on, but we got to make sure the axle lines up with the differential. Just got to kind of line it up. There we go. We'll line up that and that. We should be pretty close. I was pretty liberal on applying the silicone oil resistant sealant. Get these kind of started. Again, 48 foot-pounds. I got a torque wrench here to make sure that I'm good. I cleaned it all up real good, and then I also put some brake cleaner on a rag as opposed to just spraying it in there and compromising the bearing grease that's inside. I only wanted to clean the faces. And then I'll tighten this up, not unlike what you would do with changing a spare tire, putting a new road wheel on, just kind of alternate. So I'm gonna set this probably down a little bit because I'm gonna torque it by hand. This is a 17 mil. Now I'll torque to 48. Now recheck. All right, so we've cleaned up the old gasket. We put on the new RTV oil resistant gasket maker. We torqued to the spec of 48 foot-pounds. And we'll just kind of clean this up. I'll probably spray down the rest of this brake disc with some brake cleaner in case some of the grease got back there. Really, all we have left now, put the tire back on, torque that. I think I do 105 foot-pounds. And then to be on the safe side, I'm gonna go all around the truck and double check all the other half shaft, axle shaft flange bolts, just to make sure they're torqued to 48 so I don't run into this problem. And then I'll retorque all the road wheels And then the last step will be retorquing the pivot bolts for the swing arm. All right, I'll be back in a bit.
Know what they have to say, it makes no difference anyway, whatever it is, I'm against it. No matter what it is or who commenced it, I'm against it.
All right, we've cleaned up the wheel. We did this to double check our work in case we start to leak again. We'll be able to see. I'm going to remount the wheel and torque it to 110 foot-pounds. I'll do that now. Always check to make sure you're not cross-threading these before you put any kind of gun on them, because you'll strip these wheel lugs in a heartbeat. I'd already, I just rotated these tires. I mentioned I cleaned the axle breather before in that process. I rotated the tires and also put anti-seize on the lugs. So I didn't reapply it because it's only had maybe 1,000 miles on it. 110 foot-pounds. Good evening, everybody. Dan here on behalf of Mike Green and offroadexperience.com. Just a final recap. The axle on the driver's side was also loose. I had previously torqued the passenger side flange nuts down to 48 foot-pounds upon pulling the drive wheel or road wheel off the driver's side and checking it. It was also, the axle was also loose there. Not as bad as the passenger side, but by retorquing those to 48 foot-pounds, probably averted a problem, another leak issue down the road. I also pulled the front wheels and then checked those axles. They were fine, so no issues there. Then lastly, I double-checked the torque on the pivot bolt nut for the rear sway bar. Those both checked out, left and right side checked out at 50 foot-pounds. Those were good. And then the final step was refilling the rear differential with 80/90 gear oil. That took about a half a pint. So that was topped off. So I'm good to go. Reminder, double check your vehicle after you come off the road, both that cursory check for any debris, any obvious signs, and then give it a closer inspection when you get back home. I encourage you to get some training from Mike Green at Off-Road Experience, and you'll be able to enjoy a much funner time out on the road to learn how to handle your vehicle, but also be reminded of things like that, of checking for any issues or problems that you might have as a result of enjoying your vehicles off-road. So again, on behalf of Mike Green and Off-Road Experience, cheers, go Bears, and we'll see you out on the trail. Take care.
West Coast British and Off-Road Experience here in Tunnel, Nevada. Join us next time. offroadexperience.com.
You two could be enjoying this.
Yeah, beach sitting at home. And you might find a waypoint tag.
All right. Like, subscribe, come on out and have some fun.